They feel a bit like Daffy Duck at the end of your press routine, talking about yourself all the time.
Not really, because it's a case of when you have to do something, there's no point in making an album and people not knowing what you're about or who you are. So it's something that you have to accept, that you've got to let people know what you're about. I certainly don't like the press speculating about me.
Which would happen. That's the trouble.
Well, it's touched on that, and where I can't do interviews, they're going to write an article anyway, and they get it totally wrong.
Well, that's what happened to Michael Jackson, of course. He doesn't do interviews, so everybody makes stories about having an affair with a llama and things.
I know. So in that way, I think you have to accept it that you must do interviews, but if you accept it as to try and enjoy it as much as possible. London is a bit harder for me because I know London is work, but the fact I've been travelling for the past 8 months has been wonderful.
Where have you been travelling to?
Well, first on the release of the album, it took off straight away in Europe, so I would have been around Europe, and then in February went to America, then went to Canada, and then on March it was released in Japan, so I went to Tokyo, then went to Australia and New Zealand.
How are you doing in all these other places?
Very well.
Yeah?
It's gone platinum it's just going to go in platinum in America.
My God, that's what, 500,000 or something?
No, that is very...
$1 million?
Yeah, it's
$1
million in there.
Yes.
Because we went gold. Oh, when I was out there in February, it was already veering to going gold. And it just took off so quickly in America. I mean, quickly being that, it takes ages to catch on.
It does in America,
In London, it goes so many trends and phases. So you can be very successful in London one week and you're not known the next week, but it's not like that in America. They only sort of, once you get in,
you're in.
And they're very loyal to you.
That's true, but that's the same in parts of Europe. France, for instance, it's very, very similar.
Well, I've been to Paris because it's gone through there as well, so it's a few weeks based in Paris. I've gone back twice. But the big success stories for Japan, I suppose. On the release of the album, it was #1 international album on the release day alone. So when I got there, in the 2 weeks I had been there, it was just released for 2 weeks, we had gone gold. It was veering to going gold in Japan.
It's so strange.
It just took
when you
so
think...
quickly, and also they have 2 charts. They've got international charts and they've got their own Japanese charts, and we were in both because they took it as very cultural, and then the ordinary Japanese would have listened to it as well. So it was really incredible.
To me, with no disrespect, it's a very unlikely record to have had such a massive success.
Well, it's one of those things, you could see how it could be successful because it's very, very different. And sometimes you'll find the public just wants something different. They're sort of screaming, give me something different. This is me only just my opinion about it, And, they've had the same music over and over, what's like it, what's not like it. And then they hear this and they think, what's this? They sort of go, hang on, we don't know what this is. And that's the reaction we've had in America. Anytime they played Orinoco Flow, the telephone lines would jam because everybody kept ringing up saying, what is this? Driving along and you heard this and it's, kept thinking,
But you've been quite lucky in a way because the sort of ethereal, drifty sound that you have has been done, but not in the same way. By people like the Cocteau Twins, and they've had a very closeted success.
Well, the thing about this is it's spanned right across. It's hard to say why it's been so successful, but I think it's also that a lot of people are listening to different music. I think in the past 4 years, they've started to expand a bit more. There is a lot of music in the charts now that is not what you'd call pop or chart music.
That's right, yeah.
It's like
the mold's been shattered, hasn't it? Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons this album has been successful, is that they're willing to listen to what's different. If it's good and it's different, then I think it's accepted.
You tend to carry the Irish flag around with you almost everywhere you go, I should imagine.
But it's not a conscious decision. It's because I actually speak Gaelic as my first language.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's when you're a child and it's what you heard first is the most it's the closest thing to me, you know. And because I want to sing in Gaelic, it's only because it's my first language, you know.
So when you go home to Guido, sorry, that could be pronounced completely wrong.
That's Guido, yeah.
Do you speak Gaelic to your friends and your folks?
Yeah, it's known as a Gaoth Dobhair, which means that basically the people brought up there speak Irish as their first language, and English is taught at school.
Because my flatmate Scott, he's very pro-Irish because he's got a girlfriend and lives in Dublin and all this sort of nonsense. But he's got a map of Ireland with the Irish-speaking areas shaded in pink, and in your sort of section of the country is predominantly Irish-speaking, isn't it?
Well, it's Donegal, then you find Galway, then there's Mayo. It's more in the west, and I think there's a small Gaoth area actually in Dublin, but they don't really have their own dialect. They don't have a distinct, it's only just taught. But I wouldn't consider that as a Gaoth area. I think a Gaoth area is where you speak Gaelic first and you go to school to learn how to speak English. And you go with the dialect, like there's different dialects all the way down.
Lord. So how many people speak these different dialects? Presumably it must be a matter of hundreds rather than...
Yeah, it would be hundreds, yeah.
Do you think it's a dying thing, or is it people keeping it alive?
It's dying, but it's like it's at a linear stage. It won't go completely out because there are children being brought up speaking Gaelic, but I think they're learning how to speak English at an earlier stage than how I can remember it.
So how old were you when you learnt English?
It would be when I was 3, 4.
That was when you first went to nursery school or something?
It would be, the national school at home. And I would have started to... But the strangest thing is when you speak Gaelic and I have to revert back to English, I find I have to emphasise my words because in Gaelic it's much softer. It runs quicker and we don't emphasise a lot of words that you emphasise in English. Like the TH is something we don't emphasise at all, hence my name Eithne was always Enya in Gaelic.
So yes, you just cut that bit out.
Yeah, the TH was always silent.
What sort of a place is Guido? I mean, is it a tiny little village?
It's very in the countryside. It's right on the Atlantic coast. Very beachy all around it, and it's very mountainous. Donegal is very, very mountainous.
Apparently you've got like the second highest mountain in the British Isles or something.
Well, Mount Errigo.
Perhaps.
Well, there's one in Cork, but we've the second highest mountain just in Ireland, in Donegal, Mount Errigo. But it's got very dramatic names as well. It's only just on a TV show I did recently with Val Donegan where he took musicians back to where they were born and you showed him on the TV show like where was your special place, and there's places at home like Poison Glen and Bloody Foreland and it's all dramatic names, you know. But I wouldn't, you know, to me what's so dramatic about it, I just knew it as I was growing up, so it's not
that far from Northern Ireland's border, is it?
It's like Donegal is just right there, and then you have Derry and Omagh would be there, and then if you veer down you go into Sligo, which Sligo's in the south, but it's right near the north.
Because I saw you on that Val Doonican show a couple of Sundays back, and it looks very, very dramatic, very pretty country in a kind of barren way. But it must be a hell of a contrast to come from that and be faced with this.
I think contrasts are brilliant.
Yeah.
I do think, because the fact of the way I work in the studio, in isolation with just Roma and Nicky and nobody else. And I have to concentrate so much on music that I find I get so drawn into myself while I'm working. And what's happening outside of that is so irrelevant to me. And then the next few months I'm spending with so many people and I'm traveling all over the world. And I love it when it's a major contrast. And it actually helps my lifestyle. And it's the same with living in Dublin. It's important to me because I work there. And it's important for that side of it. But then if I want to forget about work, I'll just go home. And that's where I go home, and it's the local people are very aware of the success I've had. And after the initial sort of congratulating, it's Enya's they can remember
they just
growing
let you
up.
get on with it.
Yeah, and that's nice as well. And it also brings you back to your roots and takes you down, you know. If you're sort of any ego trips, once you go home, you soon lose them, really.
Don't you feel like a fish out of water, though, in the pop industry generally?
No, I don't, because I think Ornoka Flow was a different song anyway in the charts. I don't think it was commercial. I think
it ran the risk at one point, though, of being seen as a novelty record in the same way as... Well, I'm trying to think of an example, but there have been plenty of records that have had a unique, different sound, and that's been it. It's been a one-off, you know.
Right, but the main concern for us is that we can carry on working on the music we're doing. That's our main concern. The fact we had a #1 hit was not something we thought about. We didn't even work on Ornoka Flow as a single. It was Rob Dickens from W had said, we will release this and see what will happen. The album came first, then the single. You know, everything was done was for the album. And the album would always be the important thing for us.
I would have imagined at first it might have seemed there were no singles on it. There must have...
Yeah, I mean, that was the reaction. There's such a wide variation on the album that you cannot say it's Orinoco is very different to everything else in the album, because Curse and Proficio is so different to Watermark, as it's so different to Storms in Africa or On Your Shore. We treated each one as like a separate project to work on, to experiment, and then finish it and set it aside. And then think, let's do something very different. So we did a choral piece in a sort of classic way, with me singing very different in different harmonies. And when we'd finished that, and I'd sung it in Latin, because Latin was perfect for it, we didn't think, oh my God, a commercial album and there's Latin sung on it. We were just thinking purely for the music constantly. Not thinking about who was going to like it or the public. It was like self-indulgence on our side, that we just wanted to work on what we really felt was right.
What about now, though, now that you've had the success? Is that going to make you feel self-conscious about what you're doing?
The only thing that I'd have to shake off is the way I've had to analyse the music for like doing interviews. I have to get rid of that, so as I'm not aware of when I'm composing. I'm not aware of this is very Irish, this is very classical, you know, whereas I've had to.
So it must be a danger as well, that you must think, well, this is very commercial, this isn't very commercial.
Well, usually when I'm writing a melody and I've started to write a melody, I always go with the actual mood it wants to be in. And I know when it's right. I know when that note is right, and I know that it's not right with this note. So I usually go with my instincts rather than thinking this is very commercial, or this is... What my main concern is that it has to be a wonderful melody for me to get excited about. And in that way, once you get isolated and you start worrying about music and melodies and what's happening musically bears no relevance to us at all. And a case we had recently before Christmas where we were releasing Evening Falls, and on the B-side I had sung Silent Night in Gaelic. And once we went into the studio, it was sort of a big test to see how we were going to work again, you know, after all the success and travelling. And as soon as we closed the door, nothing had changed. Believe me, it was no easier the fact we did #1 single in the charts or anything. it was just as hard to decide how it was going to be phrased, what key we were going to sing it in, what were the multi-vocals going to be like. And it felt nice, because once you get into that, the studio is a special place anyway. Once I get into it,
it's a bit like a church, isn't it? It's sort of like,
well, once you go into it, it's
here, you know?
it's like it has a particular feel to it. You can feel all the emotions of Watermark still in the studio, how everything had happened, you know, the fights, the happiness about hearing, you know, a track finally becoming something special, you know, all the traumas, you can sense it all in it, and it's always isolated from what's happening.
It's a tiny little studio though, isn't it? I thought it was just basically Nicky Ryan's studio is basically a shed at the end of the garden, isn't it?
No. No, it
must
used
be a
to
big shed.
No, it wasn't even a shed. It was in the house they used to live in. It was an extended big hall at the back of the house. It used to be a scouts hall.
Oh, yes.
So he just transformed. I mean, it's quite big. You know, it's not minute or anything.
You don't get claustrophobic working in there hour after hour.
No, I mean, you'd have to see it. It's certainly not massive, but it's certainly not, you know, it's got a lot of space to work in it and to record in it.
You studied classical music as a teenager, didn't you, at one point? And it's been much stated in articles I've read that you don't listen, or you didn't listen to contemporary pop. Are you a musical snob?
No, I wish I could answer it as, you know, as directly as just yes or no. The reason I don't even listen to music now, I find I have a great love for music, but it's in the music I work on. And even at this stage, I don't even listen to my own music. I find music is work to me. And even if there's music not playing here, I'd be so aware of it, and I'd start dissecting it. And how they arrange that, how do they come about to arrange that?
Musicians do that, don't they? Where they analyse everything.
Yeah, and in that way I find it's like work. So if I have any free time, I don't want to listen to any music at all.
Isn't it like a drug for you though? Isn't it a drug, which it is for most artists? You need it.
No. There's a lot of artists I have met, and journalists, and people who work with music who just cannot abide to listen to music in their leisure time. They find it's work. It's not a hobby. Sometimes for people it's like when they listen to music it helps them relax, it helps them unwind. Well, for me it doesn't do that. If I sit in somewhere that's quite peaceful, then that'll help me relax. But certainly if I hear music, I'm sitting, I'm too tense, I'm aware of, it distracts me as well.
But what about classical music? Can't you switch off to that?
No, it's because I have had very little time to listen to music, because A, I'm composing it, then I'm arranging it, then I'm performing all the music. And it's like we layer a lot of the sounds, and after that's finished, then I'm singing vocals for maybe a few weeks, just for one track. And often enough, we sing a few hundred voices that aren't used. It's right, but it's not sung the right way. We've got to sing over and over and over. And if I've got any free time, you can imagine that I don't race in and turn on a radio or put on a disc and say, right, I mean, I go for a walk and I try. It's like I think constantly with music in my head. Why didn't that work? Why, we must try that tomorrow. Going to bed and hearing some rhythm going through my head the whole time. And so I try to get away from it. It's certainly not snobbery. It's just
I sense you don't like the triviality of pop music.
No, it's just, I don't listen to music at the moment, but I'm certainly aware of what's happening. But when I was growing up, I certainly had heard pop music.
And you didn't like what you heard?
No, I would have liked what was melodic in it, in what was pop. I would have heard my father playing music he played in the show band, in the dance band. I would have heard traditional music, I would have heard classical music. And I heard a lot of different types of music, but I always veered at the melodies. They were the most important part of it. And I just never got around to buying an album, possibly because I was at boarding school.
Amazing.
Well, possibly because I was at boarding school, and you didn't have so much free time at boarding school to listen to albums. So
That's
I probably found
it
it
was
a
very
waste
much
of time
frowned on. I mean, I was at boarding school as well, and I remember it was very much frowned on. that sort of music, pop music?
I just found, even if it was classical, we just had so little time. You know, we would have a half an hour just during the day and 1/2 hour at night time. The rest was all studies.
Where was that? Where was that school?
It was in County Donegal in a place called Milford.
Was it run by nuns?
Yes, it was. But the nice thing about it was there was only 100 boarders, and the rest were day pupils, and it was mixed. The day pupils were actually mixed, so it wasn't an all-girls
Was it quite
school.
strict?
Yes, it was. Quite strict. But in some ways that appealed to me because I'm a perfectionist. I like things to be organised. And I'm a very neat person. I like things like that. But then at certain stages you find it a little bit too...
So you weren't a rebel? A teenage rebel?
I would have been in things that really mattered. I certainly wasn't one for graffiti or doing silly things like that. If I had something to say, it'd be worthwhile. If I said, this is wrong because, I would certainly voice, what was wrong. But I certainly didn't go around wasting time doing things like that.
Are you sick of the media yet?
Sick of the media? At this stage, I'm a bit anxious about getting back to music. I find I've done all the interviews. I really do feel at this stage, to say to the record company, we're just about to finish, or that's it with all the promoting, and we'll start getting ready to go back into the studio. I have a holiday in there somewhere.
Right, because this is what I mean. You can talk yourself dry, really, can't you?
I can sense now, and so can the record company, that this is it. This is the end of it. So it's not like I'm hating. I certainly wouldn't have done the week promotion if I didn't want to.
Right.
There's no onus on me that I have to do it. It's certainly out of choice, which is important.
Do you get to read all the articles about yourself? I mean, do you take an interest in what people are writing about yourself?
Well, I can't read all the articles that come in from abroad, like
no, sure,
Japan.
Sure.
You're just reading through it and you're going, well, the pictures are nice.
Nice picture, yeah, sure.
But
I mean...
I tried to read some of the stuff, but again, I would have only had a matter of days at home in Dublin, and it would literally be just sort of trying to relax for a few days, unpacking and then taking off again. And
what impression do you get about yourself from things you read about yourself? Do you think journalists portray something about you which you don't like?
Yeah. It's hard to do, to analyse someone in just a half an hour or an hour, as a complete stranger, and especially if you've written or you've read some stuff before this that maybe I wasn't happy with, the fact that the titles are like Miss Prim and Proper of Rock, and I mean, that's so silly. I just do music. I certainly don't see myself as a pop star. I don't know what pop stars do anyway, because I think everyone likes to see themselves as very involved with music, and it's important music.
Well, I think most people get completely the wrong idea about so-called pop stars. I've met people in heavy metal bands who are probably better behaved than people who
that is true. I
work
met
in
them as well.
orchestras.
They sort of expecting all the heavy metal bands to be throwing the TVs out of the room and screaming.
Which doesn't happen, really.
What I see is, it's just music is a business where you write the music and then you basically talk about why you've done it. And there's a lot of sort of glam and glitz with it. Certainly for me, it's been the travelling side of it. Has been very glamorous.
Oh,
to
so
do
you
that.
like that?
Oh, yeah.
Some people don't.
No, I loved it. I mean, to travel and to work at the same time, it's really nice to actually see all of the world. So I was looking forward to all of that.
So
But certainly, I don't see why people think it's going to change you that you travel. I mean, if you were to take off tomorrow and do a world trip and come back, do you think you'd be any different? I mean, would you
Well, I think so. I think I'd be wiser for what I'd seen.
Well, I'm saying your character, do you think it's going to change
Not
how you've
drastically,
been?
no.
Like for me, I'm 28, so I don't see anything changing me dramatically at this stage. I know what I like, I know what I dislike, I know what I want to do, and I know what I don't want to do. You know what I mean?
No.
So when they say, it's a question I'm often asked, well, you must be different since Orinoco Flow. And I keep saying, I am not any different. I worked very hard, talking about it, about the album and traveling. And it's extremely hard work, even though it's very sort of, when you say to your friends, oh, I'm away to Japan, I'm away to the ocean, oh, you lucky thing. And
yeah, sure.
you think,
where has left a lasting impression on you? That
I think Tokyo, Japan, because of they have a very strong cultural background to themselves, and I loved it immediately.
Did you? I've spoken to people who've been to Tokyo who've hated it. Everything's too miniaturized, too crammed, too big.
No, I loved it. And also they're a very peaceful race. I love that.
Apparently crime is very, very low in Tokyo.
Incredibly low. And also they have a lot of traditions where they don't converse unless they have to converse with you. And after you're with them, because when I went there, I would have been constantly with the people. Like I was with Warner Pioneer, which is the equivalent to W8, and I would have been constantly with them. I had an interpreter. I had them always around me, and in that way you get to start doing what they do. You get used to their ways, because it was so different when I went to Australia afterwards. It's much more relaxed, it's not so tense, but I still enjoy Tokyo.
Is that all you got to see of Japan, Tokyo?
Yes, it was.
Surely you must have changed in the sense that you must have acquired some self-confidence, knowing that what you're doing is so massively liked.
I know, but to have recorded Watermark, you had to have a lot of confidence in the music anyway, because it's very different. So we had to, along the way, keep convincing the three of us that when we were in doubt, there's something there, and we should persist. I mean, so often doubt will creep in, even when you try to avoid it, especially if you just listen to what's happening musically, what people are buying, and you think, oh, where will Watermark fit in?
Yeah, but it's becoming so polarised, isn't it? On the one hand, you've got Stockake and Mortimer. On the other hand, you've got people like yourselves who are dismantling first chorus, bridge, middle eight structures.
I just go with what... There is no sort of formula. I just go with what the melody wanted. I certainly would hate to be dictated to, well, this is what really sells. I mean, we'd hope that what we want to work on would be what would sell, not what other people are telling us would be.
Where do you get your inspiration then? Do you just get a melody in your head and work it out?
Well, often it could be, the melody could be from an emotion, but sometimes it's, I go behind with composing. Like, I was asked, how many tracks didn't make it to the album, and there's none, because that's all that was written for Watermark, was what is there. So I tend to sometimes have a few tracks and a burst of them, and in a few months, and then it just slows down, because I'm looking for something different. I'm trying to keep it very melodic. So I could come to a standstill, but I've still got to persist in working in the studio to listen to what my ideas are and see if there's any ideas there. I can't just sit and, think, oh, this is a good day to work in the studio. It's just because I was behind time. And I sometimes work best when I have that little bit more pressure on me. If they say, we'll give you 2 months, I would take the 2 months to the last day. But if they said 2 weeks, I would get it done in 2 weeks.
So you're really a deadline person?
Not so much deadline, it's just, it helps to have a deadline to work towards. It's just trying to discipline myself, because trying to be creative in that way is not the easiest thing. You wake up one morning and you think, I don't want to go to the studio today. I don't want to. But if you have to go, you'll go. And you could write something wonderful the day you don't want to go to the studio. It'd be like writers as well. When they sit down at the typewriter, they've got to write today. They don't want to, But you
That's
could.
Right.
Yeah, and once you get into the gist of it, it could be one of your best days.
Do you suffer from, writer's block, artist block?
Yes, I would. But the
It's a
only
horrible
way to
feeling,
get,
isn't it?
It is, but the only way I can get over it is by, you keep thinking, God, that last track is the last one I'll ever write. You know? But if I persist in the studio to work and to try and relax as much as possible, I never panic myself. If I panic myself, I certainly won't write anything. It has to be a pressure of a kind, but it has to be very way in the background that I know it's there, but I certainly couldn't work with a panic situation.
Can I just ask you a bit about Clannad? How do you pronounce that properly?
I'd rather you wouldn't ask me about Clannad because we're having difficulty at the moment. A lot of people are associating me as the lead singer with Clannad, and it's getting really muddled and confused because I was with them.
I thought everybody knew you left ages ago.
No, we're getting it at the moment from press. Even today, I was doing an interview and they said, well, she's the one singing with Bono.
I know that.
I know, but it's just the media and the public are getting very confused because of Clannad have sort of emerged after so many months, working. And it's clashing a bit on us, and they're having the same problem with I'm having, and we're trying to separate it as much as possible.
Well, I didn't want to talk about it. I wanted to just ask you how do you look back on your times with them now?
For me, Enya really began would be 1983, after leaving with them. The only important thing for me was I met Roma and Nicky. They were working with Clannad.
They used to manage them, didn't they?
Well, Nicky he does live sound, and he produced their albums, and he was managing them with Roma. She was doing administration, setting up tours. And I started to get very friendly with them and with Nicky. He's not a musician, but he's a lot of musical ideas, which he told me about, and one of them being the multi-vocal. He's had this yearning for years and years to try it. And eventually I always felt I'd be involved with music. I didn't know how. I really didn't know. First of all, I thought I would study classical music, and then I found no, I didn't want it. And then I was with Clannad, and I thought no, I wasn't happy with this either because I wasn't composing it. I was just there, So it was only when I got with Nicky and Roma, they said they wanted to work with me. Nicky had a lot of ideas he'd like me to record with him. And it was in 1983 where I was with them in the house, and they'd taken all the financial burden off me and said to me, just try and, do something musically. If we want to set up a band, if you want to play unoriginal music, just see what happens. And I went back to doing classical training, and I started to improvise. And I just brought them out one day and I said, listen to this. That was the first melody composed.
So it was a happy coincidence.
I don't think it was a coincidence. I think there was a strong attraction there for some form where it wasn't like we knew what we were going to do, but we wanted to work with each other, and it was like we had no idea what it was. And then when I started to write instrumental music. Because Roma said, this is film world. So that's what we got involved in.
So then
first.
You thought you'd be a film soundtrack composer?
No, I never really stopped myself. Once I've achieved something, I never really stopped it there. I always hope that there's more scope for more things to happen. If you just said, well, that's it, now I know what I'm going to do, right. I think it'd be incredibly boring for the rest of your life.
So do you think you know where you're going now? Or is there more things above that you'd like to do?
It certainly feels like for us, it's, the last few years working in soundtrack, veering into getting a distinct sound was very important. It's something that everybody tries to get. We were looking for something that would be recognized as Enya. And we concentrated on working with multi-vocals, and that certainly didn't happen overnight. That you go and you sing all those hundreds of voices. You have to actually train your voice to sing it in a particular way. Because you concentrate so much.
You had quite a hard time recording Mortimer, didn't you? It was a very laborious process.
Well, very enjoyable, laborious process. What happened was we wanted to record it digitally, but because I perform all the music, and I sing all the parts except the solos. It's too expensive to go into a digital studio and just experiment. So I had to know exactly what I would be singing and playing. So we did all the pre-production in Dublin. And it meant when we came to London, we redid everything. And believe me, I enjoyed redoing all those multi-vocals.
Did you?
It was just like an opportunity to get it really, really right this time.
But you didn't take any shortcuts, you didn't sample or anything, did you?
No. With the voices, it's just, you'd have to actually sit, if you could sit in the studio, like be a fly in the wall and just watch the way we build it up and work in it. It's incredible. It's like, when I start singing the multi-vocal at first, it's like, this is awful, what are we doing? It sounds awful, it doesn't fit the track. But if you layer 7-part harmony in the sound you're making and sing it in a particular way, sometimes it wants to be soft, loud, to swell it, to revolve in the microphone, to use the microphone.
Yeah.
But all you have is if you sample it, that's it.
Right,
You just
it's
have
very
it that
dry,
way.
isn't it? Yeah.
And that's all it does. Nothing, no emotion whatsoever. And I always listen to the track and we build up by just what feels right. And sometimes I might sing a lovely harmony, but it wants to be sung softer, or it wants it to be sung stronger. So we wipe out all the voices that are already there, maybe 90 voices, and begin again, and to sing it until we're happy with it. And then Nicky's very important as well, because he's actually building up a sound. So we don't really say, we don't have a formula like, we sing these voices 10 each or 30 each. It has to be that note. No, just sing a few more, Enya. Right, we have enough of that note. And then just a few, it has to do with the sound factor of it rather than the formula.
I can't imagine you'd be able to work with anybody else comfortably, would you?
Well, that again, I'd like to leave the doors open to. Certainly at this moment, I have no desire to work with anyone. But even the fact of working with a drum kit, which we don't work with, I certainly would like to leave the door open for that as well. If it happens that a melody will evolve and it wants somebody else to play or perform with it, or if we want to use a drum kit, I certainly don't want to have any rules and regulations to say we can't. Enya doesn't work with the drum kit. Enya doesn't work with anyone else. It's certainly not like that. On Storms in Africa, I did work with Chris Hughes. He did the drumming on that, and I enjoy it. So it's not like when it feels like we need somebody else, we bring them in. But we certainly don't want to bring somebody in for the sake of hoping to make it something. It's got to be there before you bring somebody else in.
But you must lead quite a lonely existence, especially when you're recording. I mean, Nicky, Roma, that's it really, isn't it?
Yeah, but I have my family, I've got my social life outside of that. I mean, we have our hours and we work late, and some days we don't work at all. One day could be 1 hour, another day could be 14 hours. But it's not like, don't take it as like it's a hermit, that we go in and we just huddle together. It's not, we're just verbally saying we isolate ourselves. But it's not like we don't see anybody else outside of that.
So you do have a healthy social life?
I do. But I have to restrict myself from, pushing myself too much if I've got to vocalize the next day,
Yeah.
Anyway, I have a preference.
Do you drink?
I was just going to say, I have a preference for restaurants and bars.
Right.
Because my main drink is wine. You can't get a good wine in a bar. So I end up going out to a lot of restaurants. But I love to go out to restaurants and eat, and I like on the occasion to go to the pictures and things like that. But
Right.
just quite normal that I have a different way of working.
I heard somewhere that your dad runs a bar, but he doesn't drink. Is that right?
Yeah. Is that unusual?
Odd. It's very.
No, Daddy's always
So-
been it. The reason he got the pub was that he used to be in a dance band, and he used to tour quite a bit. And it was a family band as well. And then he eventually got tired of the touring. So what he did was, he had quite a big following. He used to play a residency in a few hotels. So what he did was he bought a pub, and it's an entertaining pub. So all the people then came to see him in the pub. So that was his main goal, rather than the fact, let's get a pipe, because I drink. It was only just because he could actually entertain. And he still entertains them.
Whereabouts is that? Where's the pub?
It's in Gaoth. It's just in another area in Gaoth.
So you drink, is that your main vice, or have you got any greater vice that you can confess to?
I'd say it's drink. I mean, I like
So
the
Enya
champagne.
does let her hair down.
Well, yeah, I certainly do. I mean, in the studio, we get quite aggressive as well, on the music because of
The
only
temper's
working.
free?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I'm Taurus the bull, and I'm very stubborn, and it's good and it's bad. I mean, sometimes when the doubt creeps in and I'm very stubborn to try Nicky's ideas, we'll clash, we'll have a big argument. So it usually clears the air, and then we get right, just forget about anything else, just let's go for what we want to do. Let's record it. If it's mad, if it's silly, let's go for it. If it's not good, then we won't, we just wipe it out. We can do what we want. But it's also, it's incredible what really sounds good, but to actually record it, you really can't imagine that this idea would fit,
Can I just read you something? I don't know if you've read this. This is from a magazine called Offbeat. The writer said here, Nicky and Enya, because I gather that he must have done the interview with you and Nicky. Nicky and Enya recall the trivia of pop music, but they are too reticent to explain anything. They don't want to talk about anything but their music, but they don't want to explain anything about it. They fail to realise that perhaps people want to read something light-hearted, not just informative subject matter about someone and the record they've just brought out. If all interviews revolved around studio talk, magazine circulations would soon plummet. And what's your comment on that, and what the guy said about you?
About talking about the music?
About the fact that you will... I mean, you obviously didn't want to talk about anything apart from music to him.
But there is very little else to talk about at that stage. Now I can talk about the travelling I've done in the last 8 months and the people I've met. But at that stage, that was our livelihood. We decided we had this opportunity to make a solo album, and it was important to us because we felt if it was successful, then we could carry on working as we did. But if it wasn't, we'd have to reconsider what we were doing.
Well, I think what he's getting at is that you don't like people intruding on your...
But there isn't
Private
that
life.
much in my private life that I keep away from the press. I mean, they ask what I do in my free time. I really like it when it's quite peaceful. I certainly like being with friends. I would go out to socialise, to eat. And, it's I don't know what they want to find or to... I don't know what it is they want to find out in my personal life.
There's another line, this is your quote, it says, "There isn't any romance in my life because I've dedicated my life to music. I don't see anything wrong with that. I'm happy with it. I don't feel I'm missing out on anything."
Well, I'm afraid that's my independence sort
Don't
of
you
side
think
of it.
It seems like quite a mono-dimensional life. I think if there's no romance in your life, you are missing out on something, surely.
But that's for Watermark. We're basically talking about Watermark. I mean, it
Does the
certainly
situation
doesn't.
change?
It certainly doesn't, reflect on my last 28 years completely. Just what I've done for Watermark. But certainly, I hoped that the album being successful, would actually give me more time. That I don't have to dedicate every second of my day to the album, that we can work on a basis of taking weekends off to work 5 days a week and to have the hours a bit more reasonable.
Until the next one.
No,
And then the
I'm
whole
saying about
process-
the next album.
Right. Oh,
To
so-
work it in that way.
Right.
That,
Yeah.
I mean, we really had to prove ourselves that we did have something special. So when you're working for yourself, you tend to really want to give 100% of your time.
So, do you have a relationship going now?
Yes. I mean, That's all I want to say about it. I've bought my own property and settled in my own place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, something I always wanted to look forward to was buying somewhere that would be very special to me. So I've done that in the last few months. And
So you're not a celibate recluse.
no,
This
far
is the
from
picture
it.
that is painted of you, though, don't you
No.
admit?
I tend not to worry too much about things. If I constantly worried about everything that was written about how the album's going to sell in all the countries, you know, I wouldn't have much time to think about Enya. I mean, once we finished the album, it was a record company's problem to go and sell the album and market it, not ours.
Is the next one planned now?
Well, we know we're veering towards going into the studio, but because of the success of this album, we're in the position of being able to bring in a digital machine into the studio in Dublin, which means that we don't have to repeat everything we do.
Right.
It would actually be mastered as we go along. And that's like a dream come true. That's the ultimate dream.
Save
to
a
have.
lot of time, won't it?
Well, it's to hear the quality-wise as you
Right,
go
yeah.
along and know that this is going down for real and that, you know, some of it feeling-wise and the excitement you lost in repeating it. The vocalizing side was fine, but playing a lot of the tracks I played in free time, and it really depends on your mood. And if you're surrounded by an environment that you're not used to, like being put into another studio, it's going to bring out a different mood in you. You know, so hopefully.
Did the success you've had take you by surprise?
It's like we tend to accept things. I think it's maybe to do with our age, you know. I mean, it's not like I'm a teenager or I'm sort of 16 or 18 and all of a sudden I have a different lifestyle. You know, it's been gradual, very gradual.
Right, and you've been brought up more or less in that atmosphere
Yeah, and
anyway,
in that
haven't
way, it's not such a major shock to me.
you? Right.
I certainly enjoy all the success of it. It's
What
such a
level of
wonderful
success
feeling.
would be your ideal? Or
Well, I
you know.
think what's happening now, the fact that we have an audience there, that we work on an album, that it would sell, you know, that it would be accepted. And I really love the idea of it spanning right across. That's something that we didn't think about, who the audience, what age group it would be.
I would have thought your sort of success would be a very nice one to have, because you tend to appeal to a very sober audience, and therefore you're not going to get hassled too much.
That is something. I mean, I'm recognised now in Dublin, but it's with so much respect. It's nice.
Right. What
It's
about
not
here?
like-
Do you get noticed here?
On occasions, I would be, you know, in a restaurant, or you know, people would say to me, but it's not as major as Dublin's much smaller, so you'd be easily recognised. And because I come from, you know, I live in Dublin, it'd be so easily recognised. But what was I saying before that? On the record, it's not like can't imagine what it's like if you're a mega star where they're all screaming behind you. You know, I certainly.
But you wouldn't want that, would you?
I would dislike that. But I somehow doubt it would ever come to that stage anyway.
What do you do about holidays? Where do you take your holidays? In Ireland, or would you like to go abroad?
Well, because I haven't had a lot of time. Certainly, we're coming up to holiday now, holiday time. And I have no idea where I want to go. I mean, I'd like to go somewhere that's quite peaceful. I certainly, you know, I'd like a nice climate, brilliant hotel. I've learned a few things about hotels on my travels.
Yeah.
And good food, you know. So I haven't really chosen where I'd go, but certainly I would go home first for a week, perhaps, because any chance if I have a weekend or a few days, it's possible for me to fly now instead of fly to near Donegal.
Really? You can do that?
Well, I can fly to Sligo now, and also there's an airstrip opening in Donegal. And I actually flew in a private plane at Christmas time to Donegal, where I live.
Not your own?
No, it was chartered there was an award ceremony, they wanted me in Dublin, so it was a condition that they only took, one night because it was my Christmas holidays.
Yeah.
So they chartered a plane, and there's an airstrip there, but now it's been taken over by the Aer Lingus, and they're going to start bringing in flights.
Well, that'd be good for you, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It'd be brilliant.
1 hour to Dublin?
Yeah.
That much?
Yes, it is.
It's quite a long way then, isn't it?
It is. It's also the roads in Ireland are really
they're very bad, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah. Hours and
I know,
hours.
because I drove from Dublin to Connemara once. It took ages.
Well, if you were to drive now, if I gave you directions to go to Gaoth, you're talking about 6 or 7 hours if you don't know the way.
God.
And that's the shortcut.
Dear, oh dear. How do you relax, apart from what you've already said about not listening to music and maybe going to a restaurant? Do you have any interests outside of music?
So sure I do. Interest being, I like shopping, believe it or not. I like going out to shop.
You must
But
like it
lately-
here then.
Yes, I do. On Saturday I did a fair bit of shopping, but now I'm sort of buying things for my house, things
Right.
that are really nice here. It's not necessarily clothes I would go out to shop for all the time. But what else would I like? Well, I like TV to a certain extent. I like black and white old movies.
Yeah.
They're wonderful. Rebecca is a favourite of mine.
What, the sort of 3 o'clock Saturday afternoon movie
Oh, yeah.
on BBC Two?
Catherine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy. I just love really old movies. They're not so demanding. I find them very entertaining. Where I went to Rain Man last week.
That's good.
But that just
like
takes every minute of your time. It's really, you get so involved in it. Whereas I find the old black and white movies had a particular feel to them,
Yeah.
Or do you like black and white movies?
Oh, yeah. Especially the old Hitchcocks.
Oh, Hitchcock and Orson Welles. Oh, I love the Hitchcock ones.
There's an atmosphere that you couldn't recreate
They're
today, could
wonderful.
you? You strike me as somebody who's very sort of cool, calm, collected. What sort of things make you angry? Do you get angry?
Yes, I do. What kind of things? Let me see what gets me angry. Because I'm a stubborn person, I don't give in too easily, and that can cause some arguments when I think I'm right. I mightn't be right, and I certainly won't give in. So that would cause an argument as such. What would make me angry? I suppose when I'm travelling, I'm more sort of prone to things annoying me. I like things to be right, if you want room service, if you want clothes pressed, and some hotels are just appalling, that would get me angry.
But you don't throw TV sets out of windows?
No.
Yet?
No.
You just mentioned that you've just
I'd be
bought...
afraid of getting a shock. Knowing me, I'd get a shock from it all.
You just mentioned that you just bought a place of your own. Whereabouts is that? Is that in Dublin?
It is, yeah.
What sort of a place is it?
I don't want to go into detail about it because of Dublin being small. If I say it's a house in a particular area, they'd know the area, and if I say it's an apartment in a particular area, they'd know the area.
But is it modern? Is it old?
It's modern.
Is it quite big?
Very big.
You must be quite wealthy now.
Wealthy?
You can afford the good
Well,
things.
there's a lot of money going back into the studio as well, with the machinery and updating of equipment. That could be priority, but it's something that I wanted to do, is to, eventually buy a place,
Well, let's put it another way. Describe your ideal home. What sort of a place would you like to end up with as your ideal?
Well, my ideal home would be in the countryside, very much so. It's only just because I work in Dublin I had to buy a place in Dublin. But it would definitely be in the countryside. I love lots of space, and I love cats. I would have just hundreds of cats around me. I just adore their company.
I'm allergic to them.
Really?
I used to have 3 cats, but I'm allergic to them, unfortunately.
Well, at home once we had 12 cats. That was in Guidor because it is sort of in the countryside and they're all outdoor cats and they can just roam about. It was just blissful having 12 cats.
Well, that's great in the country.
It is.
Not in town, I don't think.
It's better for animals anyway. They have the leeway and they're not confined to rooms.
Sex is all too easily used as a marketing tool where female artists are concerned, especially in the pop business. How do you feel about that?
Well, I do think it's awful that they have to use an image to sell the music rather than the music coming first. And it's certainly not the case for us because the music always comes first and what I want to do, down to the cover of the album, to videos, what I wear. Yeah, I work with a stylist here and I just go out with her and we select the clothes, you know. So it's important to me that I'm never pushed as an image ever.
Have you ever sensed that you were being manipulated?
No, because one of the reasons we went with WA was that it was the managing director who came to us and asked for a solo album, and we were in the nice position of being able to say to them, we don't want music interfered with and we don't want my image to be interfered with. Whatever is Enya will have to be, you know, Enya. And they've been wonderful to work with because they have not interfered in any way. It's even down to who I do interviews with, what TV are lined up, you know.
I mean, obviously, I'd imagine you wouldn't want to do interviews with the sensationalist press.
No, I've actually pulled out of music press here as well. I found that they were looking for something that wasn't there. Didn't have the aggression that NME or Melody Maker wanted. So
Are they quite aggressive when they interview you?
No, they're not. It's a really wonderful interview to talk to them. But
just when it's written up.
Yes, I'm afraid they've got to incorporate aggression where it's not there. And I just found it, you know, that it was a bit unfair to, you know, the fans who like me to actually read something that I didn't. You know, it's not an actual quote. It's the way their opinions were quite aggressive of me. And I found it very unfair. And it's funny on the amount of people who would read something, and it wouldn't be a quote from me, but one of the things that Melody Maker said was, like, Enya's crap about talking about the Thompson twins. And it's incredible how so many people afterwards were under the impression that I used that word. You know, it's just you forget the detail of the interview and then you put it together and you know how you forget. And all of a sudden you have people saying, you know, did you actually say this, Enya? You know. And that's unfair, and that's why I said I don't see the point in it, really. I don't see the point in it, so.
And then in the pop press, things like smash hits, you get asked things like, you know, what do you do if a turnip cuts its head and, you know.
Well, they're just fun. I don't see them, you know, I mean, I do have younger fans, and I just see it as very humorous, and it's certainly not trying to portray me as anywhere different, whereas I found the other press, the NME and the Melody Maker, were actually portraying me as, you know, as a different person altogether. Hence, I've got, you know, press and quotes from other press because they read some of that. You know. So it does.
That's right.
It actually damages the whole thing. Yeah, it does. It'll take a while actually to get that cleared out of, you know, this system. You know.
What do you think of groups like the Pogues who are taking traditional Irish songs and bring them bang up to date?
I certainly enjoyed their song, that single they had out a year ago, Christmas time.
Oh yeah.
That was such a wonderful song. It was really brilliant. But I'm not, again, up to date with what I've heard some of their songs and their videos, and I basically think they're really, really good fun. But I love when they do the serious work like that Christmas single. That was really great. What was it? A Christmas?
Oh, Fairy Tale of New York.
Yeah. Really great.
Were the Dubliners ever an influence on you, or any trad band like that?
No, they would have been way before my time, the Dubliners.
Well, yeah,
but there was one
they're still
time.
Going,
what I mean is that they were extremely popular in a particular time, like I think maybe in the 60s, where the Dubliners were really, really big in Ireland. But now they're just like, it's like the Dubliners are the Dubliners. Everyone knows of them. But musically...
They're an institution now, aren't they, really?
Well, musically you don't hear a lot of their music. You know, it's like, I suppose like the Chieftains as well. I mean, there was one stage in Ireland where traditional music, it goes through sort of phases where there's so many festivals happening in Ireland. One stage was about 6 or 7 major traditional sort of festivals happening. And then it got too much. And then it just reverted to where bands are doing what the Pogues are doing, where they're bringing the traditional music in with the rock type of music. But
it works quite well though, doesn't it?
Yeah. But you know, it's certainly not something I would sit and listen to, but on what I hear, it does work well.
So, tell us, when's the next album going to appear? 1990? 1993?
No, it would cut it down first because we can master as we go along. That means that we don't have to go and repeat everything.
Have you got anything written yet?
None whatsoever.
So you basically write as you go along, do you?
Yeah. And usually we take one melody at a time, one track at a time. We finish that, we work on it, and then we finish it. Unless it's some of the bigger sounding songs we've left aside for maybe a few weeks because we didn't know which direction we wanted to veer in. Sometimes you need a little bit of time from it. So I would have gone ahead and written another song or a piece of music in between that.
You sometimes get fed up with it and just say, well, I'll leave it and work on that and come back to it later.
Well, that was the case for Orinoco Flow and Storms in Africa.
Yeah. Where
Orinoco Flow, we really love the sound of it. We've done the multi-vocal, the timps, brought in some strings, and then we thought, no, we don't like it. We set it aside. And then on listening to some of the tapes, we listened back to some of the stuff. We thought, this is nice. We'll work on it. So we took it out and we worked on it again. And it was shelved about 3 times. And it was only brought out in the end in the studio in London where we decided we needed another track. Really, we could do with it. We found it was a little bit too slow and we needed one more sort of a little bit up-tempo big track to just weigh it out.
Right.
And we knew there was something there. You know, had we not used Orinoco Flow on this album, we certainly would have worked on it for the next album. There was something we really enjoyed about it, but we just kept coming up against, you know, sort of brick walls and stuck with what we were going to do with it.
Well, thanks very much. That's been great.